Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and Dark Dry Drew here on this Thursday, October the 25th, 2018, 4 p.m. New York time. This is your second daily dose of happy for the day, and we hope your day's off to a splendid start, depending on where you are. Maybe your day's ending on a splendid start. It could be either way, but we hope your day's going well, because that's what we're all about here. We're all about getting into that good, happy place where we can do our best attracting and have the kind of abundant lifestyle we all want to have. And I'm glad to welcome Drew back for our second week. I'm glad I didn't scare you away last week. I'm glad you decided to come back.
No, I enjoyed it a lot. It was fun. So I was looking forward to coming back. Yeah.
And I get to actually see you this time. This is the first time we've even seen each other face to face. So this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like this. Yeah.
It's a new start again. So
that's right.
Fun.
Yeah. And of course, we're live streaming today once again to the Facebook Law of Attraction Changed My Life group. And we've been getting some good response from people there. We're hoping that the response keeps getting better and better. But we've been getting likes, so we've been getting a few comments. So that's been nice. And I'll be paying attention to the comment streams in case anybody leaves a comment during the show that they want us to comment on, so we can have more to talk about.
Yeah.
So that's going to be good. Tuesday was the first show that I did with Carlos and Alyx, and we also on that day talked about dating in the form of dating apps. That was actually Alex's idea to talk about dating apps. And I have to admit, I walked into that particular podcast wondering what the heck I was going to say, because when I was dating, we didn't have apps. I mean, apps weren't even a part of the process for us.
Yeah.
So it shows just how much technology has really changed the whole dating scene, hasn't it? I mean, not that you've actually had the other side of it, you've experienced the technology side, but you got to feel like it's a really different game now than it used to be.
Definitely. I'm more old-fashioned, so it doesn't really work the same for me. I prefer the face-to-face interaction.
Right.
Plus, it's one of those things that's so new, we don't really know the effects from it yet. And we're starting to kind of see that now.
Right.
I think it's more problematic than anything. But it's been no good for several of my best friends have found their girlfriends on there.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's a mixed bag. And it seems to be quite evasive in regards to the law of attraction, at least from my experience with it.
Now, what do you mean by that? What exactly do you mean?
I found more people that resonated with me just out in life randomly, and I think that's kind of just when you're out doing things you enjoy and thinking about connecting with people through that. That's kind of where I've found success in meeting others. The online stuff, like I said, mixed bag definitely. So if it works, but not for me. Yeah.
Well, plus you also have made a rather major life change because you graduated from school. And when you're in school, it's like you have this little incubator in which everybody can kind of interact automatically because you're at the same place. But when you leave a school, it's like somebody took the walls away, right? And now all of a sudden you're on your own. And it's a different feeling entirely.
Yeah, it's strange, especially going to UC Davis. It kind of felt like its own world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't just leaving college. I'm now entering a whole new world, and that's kind of an odd feeling as well.
Yeah.
So
I remember that feeling for myself like it was yesterday. I know it was a long time ago, but it's a strange feeling. I suspect that it hasn't changed at all for anybody coming out of school now, but it's a really strange feeling because you're so used to this rather regimented schedule of schooling for like the last 16 years, and then all of a sudden that's gone. It's like having the rug ripped out from underneath you.
Yeah, definitely. There's a bit of I'm not sure if I'd call it a loss of identity, but I know that it went from me going, oh yes, I'm an honors student at UC Davis, to now I'm just like, I'm unemployed. So that doesn't sound cool all of a sudden.
Right.
So now I'm figuring out what I want to do for work. So
yeah. Well, you've already figured out what you'd love to do for work. I mean, you want to be a stand-up comedian. Is that your love?
Yeah.
Is that really the thing that you love the most?
I think that I enjoy writing the most. So writing stand-up comedy, writing screenplays, writing satire, And then whatever, the thing about writing comedy is it's kind of pointless if you don't perform it. So
True. Yes.
and I enjoy the writing more personally than the performing, but the performing is fun too. It's different.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's get back to the whole dating thing. And this is something that I was getting quite the education from both Carlos and Alyx on Tuesday about what it's like using all the apps. And they were naming all these apps. I'd never even heard of the apps in the first place. And in the second place, they're describing how there are dating apps and there are hookup apps. And there's all this, like, and I'm thinking, whatever happened to just talking to people? I don't understand.
It's not a thing anymore. Talking. So future humans probably won't even have vocal cords.
It's the Jetsons run amok.
Yeah, it's odd. People get scared when you call them on the phone nowadays. That's like I found it hard to call people. They always want to text.
Yeah.
Face-to-face thing is once you see someone face-to-face, it makes it personal, and that's part of what the dating apps are kind of impersonal. You're just kind of like some text and pictures on a screen, and they don't really see that you're an actual person. So some of them will be pretty rude or kind of hurtful with their words and whatnot. And it's like, for me, I didn't care. It was all kind of I learned pretty quickly that it was much more for entertainment value than it was for actually dating. I think that people that really want to date, they go and they pay for it, like Match.com or something. But most of the ones that my generation uses, I don't know. And the whole hookup thing, that's not, I think that's kind of a bit shallow and short-lived. So,
that's been true for a long time before apps. That's been shallow for a long time.
Exactly. It's one of those things that's never really filled an existential void. So
that's true. Yeah, very true. Oh, it's an amazing world, that's for sure. I think about like the conversation I had with Alyx and Carlos. At one point, you mentioned texting. I mentioned to Alyx, I don't understand how it is you're supposed to actually get to know somebody in texting, and yet that seems to be what everybody wants. And her response was, yes, that's exactly the problem right there. So I thought, well, geez, I mean, it almost sounds like there needs to be another step forward in the solution provider's realm, so to speak. Like something else is missing, and I think that missing is what you're talking about. The thing that's missing is the lack of direct human contact. I mean, video, at least you have the chance, you can get some of the signals, body language and that kind of thing. You can get some sense of that, right? But there's nothing like being in the same space, the same room with somebody and having a conversation to get to know them. And I don't see how you can replace that, actually.
Yeah, I don't think it is replaceable. A good start, if you had an app that just connected two people for like 1 or 2 minutes and you could just talk face to face over like this with the camera, that would be better than what's out there now. But I think that intimidates people because a lot of people can kind of develop their persona over the internet and be someone else. But in face to face, it comes down to your raw ability to talk.
Right. Yeah.
Which I think scares a lot of people.
Actually, as you said that, it reminded me back in my day, before the internet came along and I'm trying to meet people, there was a thing called video dating. You'd go into an office where they had video cameras set up and they'd make like a VHS tape of you talking into the camera about who you're looking for and so forth. There wasn't a communication. It wasn't in the sense of a conversation. It was more of like, it was like a video version of a personal ad more than anything else. And the thing that I remember most about them is, first of all, that they weren't terribly successful. Second of all, they were terribly expensive because you pay these large amounts of money to do them. And third, the people, like you said, would get really, really nervous about it. So even if you were trying to play the game and do the video service thing, you're going through video after video after video where you have one really nervous person after another, and you're saying, this doesn't show me who they are.
Yeah.
This just shows me what they look like when they're nervous.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah, I think dating's one of those things that I'm sure it'll work for some people online. but it seems on average it kind of just has to happen naturally.
So
yeah, do you have any thoughts on that? Or?
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier that you like the idea of using the law of attraction, which, of course, that's what our show's about. So,
yes,
like, what's your way of? I mean, do you have any particular approach that you take to try to attract meeting the right person, meeting the right, the special someone, or whatever? I don't know what's the current phrase these days. I don't even know what you call it.
I don't know. You can't even ask anyone out on a date. You have to say hang out, or else they get too scared. That's what maybe I'm just too straightforward though. Maybe I'm jaded and I'm too old timey. But yeah, I think that when you find someone that's like, because I was always like ahead of my age, like old soul, which is good and bad. Good in that I think that in some ways you progress faster through life in areas where it can help you in the future. But then definitely you end up skipping over things as well, and then kind of wanting to go back, like, oh man, I kind of skipped over that rebellious phase, and now I'm old and I want to do that, but I'm old.
I don't know. I'm not sure the rebellious phase ever ends. Actually, to be perfectly honest, I mean,
that's great. Then I'm excited to hear that.
I mean, I still feel like I'm a rebel in some ways. I'm more like a traditional rebel now, I guess, but I still feel rebellious. I rebel against a lot of things. I just do it differently now. I mean, when you're young, you tend to rebel in, like, striking out, all kind of angst and anger and all that kind of thing. Now my rebellion takes the form of laughing at things. I mean, if I don't like it, I just laugh at it. Or if I like it, I laugh at it. And that makes it indistinguishable in somebody else's eyes. They can't tell whether I like it or I don't like it.
Yeah. But that's a pretty solid approach, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty deadpan a lot of the time. I'm trying to be more lively for the podcast, but a lot of the time I'll just, you won't even be able to tell. Just kind of flatten emotions.
Just flatten it out, yeah.
Yeah, just for fun, just for kicks.
That's the danger, though, when it comes to trying to meet somebody, because when you're getting to know somebody, they got to see who you are, and you got to see who they are. And especially, I understand the thing about being really scared about something as direct as going out on a date until you've had time to get to know each other. And that's been around, I think, for the longest period of time. But even then, you actually have to take the time to do it. I mean, the hanging out, that's a good idea. I think hanging out's a great idea because all expectations are gone, right? It's not like you have some requirements you have to meet or something like that. This is just get to know each other, and that's really the right way to do things, I think.
That's how I've been approaching it. Just if I find someone interesting, guy or girl, just to hang out with them and see where it goes. So I met a few interesting people lately. And I did have some pretty trippy law of attraction stuff happen too, which was cool.
Like what?
There's a young performer named Billie Eilish, and she's on tour right now, and she's blowing up in the music world, doing really well.
Wow, good for her.
And I didn't really know her at all. I saw an interview, and I'm like, man, this is a really interesting performer. Like I'd like to see her or even to talk to her at some point, just because the aesthetic that she was going for with the music videos and then kind of the vibe of the music, all of that was very interesting. And then my friend won concert tickets and a meet and greet, and so we went and hung out with her, and she did a private performance, and then we went to the sold out show, and all of this happened just kind of out of the blue. It was sort of surreal for my friend and I. And so it's just kind of one of those instances where I literally just, it was a couple of weeks ago that even occurred to me. And I'm like, oh, that'd be a really interesting performer to meet and to go see. And then it happens all at once. And I'm like, all right, things are on the right track. And a few other instances of really positive things happening. So
that's when you're in that really good positive space, because you put something out there and something almost exactly like it happens. You're in a good zone when that happens. You're in a good feeling place.
Yeah, and that's after 1 to 2 years, I'm getting there. So it's weird in a way. You know,
1 to 2 years since what?
to bring my mood back to a solid place.
Ah, okay.
Definitely, yeah,
Right,
and
because
getting yeah,
you,
with the stomach problems and the
yeah,
other stuff. So
yeah, because you talked about some
yeah,
of that last week, and yeah, you went through some pretty rough stuff when you were in school.
yeah, yeah. So it's all on the that chapter of the book is finished, and the
That's
new
good.
one's looking very promising. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
nice. It's good when things
yeah,
start looking up like that. You start to feel confident, like, geez, maybe this is all going to work out right.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then something often will get thrown, and you gotta prepare for it, and then it's just adapting. So that's how it lately feels.
That's life. Life throw things
Yeah,
at you, and yeah, and how we handle the things that get thrown at us really indicates how the stuff that follows is going to work. Because if we're if we don't react well, if we react, get into angst about it and so forth, then we tend
yeah,
to get more angst. But if we can find where the silver linings are, and dismiss the part that wasn't so good, and just look at the part that we like, then we continue to get more of the stuff that we like, and that's the skill. That's really the skill of being a deliberate creator, right
yeah.
there.
That's I think that's what's been resonating with me lately.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly how you described it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's sort of. I think I think everyone gets into ruts at different periods of their life, and it's sort
Yeah.
of like each one's like it's like a puzzle. You gotta it has its own unique things that you have to figure out that are
Right.
specific to your life and your situations, and you got to piece it together and
Yeah.
question everything. I've been learning that one. Never believe that anything is as it is.
Well, it never is it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's all a trip. So
That's a
yeah,
good way to describe it. It's a self-created trip, which is what's even more mind-boggling
yeah,
about it. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. In fact, when we're creating these trips, we don't realize we're creating a trip, do we? We think we're just living our
no,
lives and making our decisions, but we're actually creating something along the way.
yeah, yeah. It's like you're trying to fit your life into this unique shape that you think is yours, and then you find out it's like, no, it looks more like a triangle than a square, and you're like, oh my god.
What was I
And
thinking about? A triangle?
yeah, so you gotta change everything, and then
Mm,
and then you figure out your world's not made of 4 lines; it's made of 3 lines, and yeah, that's kind of learning all that. That's
yeah.
been the and that's and all that holds true for dating. That sort of sometimes I wonder if it's more about your own self or the other people, and
What do you mean?
of like how much of making things happen is in your own hands. Because I heard one person was like, oh, for dating you'll eventually find someone. But like my mom, for instance, she's all, oh, Drew, if you just do the things you enjoy, you'll meet people that even if it's just friends, it doesn't have to be dating, and I'm fine with that because I'm not like hunting.
Right.
I'm not on the prowl. Like I'm open to that at this period.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it's if what do? I write and I draw and I go to metal shows, and that's most of my life. And you don't really meet very many people in your own room.
Funny
And
how that
then
works.
yeah, they don't just materialize. And then metal shows, there's like 10 people at the metal show, and I already know all of them. So I'm like, all right, well, I either gotta get new hobbies or more hobbies, or figure that out a different way.
I think you're on the right
So
track with interests, because I mean, not just hobbies, but anything that's of interest. That's definitely the right thing to be looking at. And I wish I had spent more time doing that, to be perfectly honest, when I was your age. I've spent more
yeah,
time trying to figure out what was expected of me, which was definitely the wrong track to be on. But I did that for the longest time, and then after that didn't work out too well, then I tried following the American dream, so to speak, of go out, work hard, and you'll be successful. And I I did succeed in going out on my own and become an entrepreneur, and I actually survived that way. I never became wealthy doing it, but I did survive. I was able to support myself. I've been able to support myself that way. My wife and I have been doing that for years now, for a couple decades now. But it's still the old approach has not really worked out the way I was told it was going to work out, and I didn't really know about the law of
Yeah.
attraction. But now that I understand the law of attraction, I would say the road you're talking about that you're taking much more productive, because when you follow your love, when you follow your heart doing the things that you love to do, even though you can't see how it's going to lead to a career or to a relationship or to anything that you're looking for in your life, if you just follow it, you keep getting there. And it shows up in the most amazing ways and the most amazing places just because you're following your heart. You're doing what you love.
Yeah. That's very interesting. I like that. And I think that's something that's hard to come to terms with at times,
Oh, yeah.
especially patient, because it can, especially when you see other people in a similar position and they're much farther ahead than you, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like, well, how did this happen? But then it's the circumstances of your own life sort of that dictate that. No one's that's everything's I think that there's a lot of stuff that you can't really compare when you look deeper into it.
Mm-hmm.
That at first you can be like, oh, like in our lives we have these things in common, and this person's much more well off. But if you were to examine like every year of someone's life every day on paper, and then to compare both of those, I think that's kind of more where it shows that you have to accept the circumstances of where you came from and then where you're headed, and with your capabilities and your position. I mean, even just where you're born dictates so much of your life. That is just outrageous.
Yeah, I get you. I know because I left where I grew up, and it took me a while to leave there, but I did, and I'm glad I did. I mean, I still have some
Yeah,
family. I even have a few friends that are still there, but I'm glad I left because it really was not the right place for me to be at all. It was the right decision to move. It was the right decision to leave. And I think that comes back to what you were kind of hitting at a few minutes ago. You were talking about, I don't remember exactly how you said it, but you were talking about how when people meet, that you're trying to kind of feel out how to relate to the other person. And that's not the way you said it. You said it's something similar to that. But it made me think that when for instance, when I moved away, or when I've gone into things that have worked out well for me, the thing that I tried to do early on was to do what you were talking about, compare myself to where somebody else was at. And
yeah,
it took me a long time to let go of that one. But I finally got to the point where I said, you know what? I can't control where I'm at compared to where somebody else is at. I just had to let go of that. And I think there's even a little part of me that still hasn't completely let go. But to the degree that I have let go, that's been freeing on an amazing
yeah,
level, because it really doesn't matter where somebody else is compared to you. That's their life. Your life is a different life. And so really it comes down to, I think it comes down to how much I love myself. How much love am I willing to give to myself? If I give enough love to myself, it doesn't matter what's going on with anybody else, because that love's going to carry me to all the things that I want anyway.
yeah, yeah. That's true. That's something I've been working at, and I feel that. I think it's a challenge. I think that society kind of, brainwashing might be a bit hyperbolic, but it kind
Not
of
all
it's
that
it's like
much. It's
it's
pretty
like
close.
subtle brainwashing. Yeah, it's just kind of subtle. Like with the I mean, one of the things I remember that was kind of a rough thing when I was with my back when I had a girlfriend that grew up on like Disney films and stuff. I think that the sort of whole princess approach kind of like puts it shifts the dynamic of dating, and so there are like all these kind of things that you'd see in Disney films that seem like they'd be great in real life, but it just never works out the way that it is in the films. But I
Mm,
think that a lot of young people believe that, men and women.
mm,
And so that was something that I personally was like, I'm not really feeling that. I kind of like the egalitarian, like we're on the same plane of like splitting things and both contributing equally and having the same equal say and rights and all that in the relationship. So subtle things like that kind of I hadn't realized from childhood, or even just commercials, and kind of the way that all of that is just subtly some adult's opinion being projected for kids to see, and then it changes how they think. And one commercial is not going to do it, but when you grow up like I did, watching like Dish for years, and you've seen all these commercials, it's kind of subtle and all that stuff. So that's something I've been looking at. That's kind of like, ask yourself where your beliefs come from. So I know that with my stomach problems, there are periods where I'd be like, oh, I'm on the right track. I mean, like, half the stuff I'm eating is vegetables. Like, I feel like I'm eating a healthy diet. But then when you're like, yeah, but the other stuff is literally processed who knows what. Like, if any amount of that is in your diet, then you're probably not eating healthy. No amount of carrots and potatoes is going to make up for the actual garbage that I'm eating. So that's when I was like, all right, no processed food. It finally makes sense now. I'm not a toxic waste dumpster. I'm a human being.
Good for you. Hooray.
So, yeah.
That's a victory. That's where you reach around and you pat yourself, right?
Yeah. Years. Yeah. When I was a freshman in college, I was having like 5 sodas a day and burgers and fries and all that kind of stuff, and it was fun to live that life, but I don't think it works out. Didn't work out for me. Maybe if I didn't have the stomach problems though, I'd still be doing all that. If I felt normal eating all that, yeah, the hood rat life.
I'm not
forever.
so sure though. I mean, because my freshman year, the second semester, you know how bad cafeteria food can tend to be when you're in school. So we decided to go off of the food plan and go on to what we called the McDonald's plan, and it was actually worse. You eat that stuff enough, and I mean, by midway through the semester, I was practically, I wasn't ill, but I was like psychologically ill, and I was malnourished. I mean, I just wasn't getting enough nourishment out of it. So, did I have the stomach problems? No, my stomach problems came much later, but I certainly was not doing myself any favors, and I got off of that as soon as I could. In fact, the first thing that I remember saying to my roommate at the time was, what are we going to start eating, because this isn't working? And he agreed, and we were flummoxed because we were out in the middle of nowhere. It's not, I mean, we were near a big city, but we didn't have easy access to transportation that would take us to grocery stores or whatever. So our opportunities were pretty limited, and we're trying to figure out how are we going to survive where the food is concerned, because as bad as the cafeteria was, this is worse. What are we going to do?
Yeah, I feel that. It's definitely one of those things where it's like you can shoot your left foot or your right foot, but either way, unless you want to. Eating healthy costs a lot of money. I didn't expect that to be such a burden, but it takes longer to prepare. But I think that like you're saying, the emotional, psychological aspect of that, where you don't feel like a zombie, I think that's a pretty fair trade.
Yeah, and that is big.
Yeah,
that's very big.
Yeah. I think we were talking about that, doing a whole episode just on how terrible American food is, and kind of seeing all the effects of that. Because there's like the obvious. I think the obvious one that everyone goes to is like obesity, because that's very apparent. That's the obvious one, right? Like if someone eats a lot of crap food, they might be obese. But it's the effects in here that no one really thinks about as much. It's more, I'm sure plenty of people do, and they've been talking about it forever. But on average, I never heard any of that until the past few years. Like that was stuff that I had to search for to learn. I never had nutrition in school. I probably should have.
Did they offer classes in it? Because I mean, I never even had, that was never even an option when I was in school. Do they actually teach classes in nutrition?
Yeah, I've never had one before, but I have friends that had. They don't eat healthy though, so I don't think it did need.
Did they graduate from the class?
Yeah, they made their own choices. Yeah. So, that's a good question. I don't know. I'll tell you, it's hard to have stomach problems and to try dating people because, especially when you cut out processed. I mean, that is everything's processed if you're eating out. Unless you find like a mom and pop place, and even then, 'cause, yeah, cutting corners on stuff, it's hard to kind of find sort of that's what I'm looking at now. What can I eat? So I'm being optimistic about it, trying to find some healthy eating out places. So especially because that's not like,
well, you made the comment that it makes it hard when you're dating. Is it just because it's hard to find a good place to go where you can get healthy food at an affordable price, or does it actually affect the relationship, the experience of getting to know somebody?
well, like food's a pretty social thing. I think it always has been. In fact, that's probably what like early man had for their thing was, communal deeds and food. I think for in terms of how things have affected my life, like I can't be like, hey, do you want to go eat out somewhere when there's like no places I can eat out. Pretty much trying to not do alcohol, all of that, right? And so I think that on the whole, invisible disabilities, anyone dealing with any sort of another challenge when it comes to dating, because then you have to find someone who's patient and understanding, which obviously is kind of what you want. At least that's what I like. Yeah, so that's been one of the things where it's like not having the ability to find some obvious place to go to, because I think that's what people are comfortable with, eating out or getting like coffee or tea. So
yeah, when I was dating, that was actually that was the usual thing to do. And I guess today it's almost considered passé. But I would arrange to meet with somebody in some place where you get coffee or tea, just because it was relatively safer than trying to go for food that you hadn't even got to know the other person yet and found out what
that's
kind
true.
of diet she lives with and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think my grandpa told me that. He said always get drinks in case the other person's crazy, because you can just get a drink and then leave.
That's not a bad approach. Yeah, I actually had.
It was pretty sound.
I had a couple of women who actually pulled that kind of approach on me. Both of whom it became very evident to me within a couple minutes of meeting them that what they were really looking for was a sugar daddy, and I wasn't a sugar daddy, and so within about 30 seconds, the drink was on the bar and they were gone. It was that quick.
Yeah. You gotta weed them out. I think that goes for everyone. You gotta weed out the people that are toxic and crazy, and it's subtle sometimes. You won't notice it until it's too late.
What do you mean?
Just sort of some of the things that overlook, small thing that won't bother me down the line, and then it does.
Oh yeah. Right.
Or it's a red flag indicative of something much bigger. Like when you see a little bit of termites on the side of your house, you always know there's way more termites inside the house. Same thing with dating, which I think was yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting point you're raising, and it's one that we kind of inversely discussed on Tuesday, because on the one hand, you're right, we do get these signals, these red flags that come up. On the other hand, what stopped me, what actually killed me in terms of having a successful dating life until I met my wife, was I was constantly looking for red flags. Every single time I met somebody, I was looking for the red flags, and it got to the point I expected to see red flags, so I would find them. Law of attraction.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
And I did that for about 20 years before in fact, I didn't even make the connection until after I met Louise and we got married, and we've been a few years together. And then I realized, oh my God, that's what I was actually doing. And I had no idea.
That's very interesting. Yeah. I don't really look for it necessarily. I'm just kind of, I wouldn't even say slightly apprehensive, but just kind of cautious. But I generally try and just treat everyone the same and being open are the way they are, which takes a long time to figure out. Often it's not always obvious, but yeah, just trying to. I do my best to remain positive with it. I think some things just take a bit of time to brew. You can't rush quality.
I think
I
you're
think
right
that
about the positive side. I think that what happened with me is I got so heavily oriented toward the red flags, I forgot to look for the positives. You have to be looking for both. You have to see the red flag, or you have to, let's put it this way, you have to be aware of the red flags when they wave themselves, but you have to be looking for the positives because everybody's going to be a mixture. You're not going to find anybody. Well,
yeah
occasionally you'll find somebody who's all red flag. I don't think I ever met somebody who was all positive, but
yeah
you know,
definitely
but for the most part, most people are a mixture, right? And when you're a mixture, it means that you are focusing
yeah
on understanding what the whole person is. And I found that it was really about, can I learn not just about the parts of the person that I like, but how will I react to the parts of the person that I'm not so crazy about? Do another way, a way to put it is like, is it a deal breaker, or is it something where I can decide to see that side of that person in a different light? Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. That's where it becomes very
yeah
individual.
yeah, and that's where you kind of have to. The judgment sort of can be a bit intimidating at time, and
Oh
whether or
yeah.
not to include someone in your life. I think my basis is generally whether it comes down to, am I enhancing their life and are they enhancing my life?
Mm-hmm.
Because the moment it starts becoming a detriment, it just seems to go downhill, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the one thing that my I've only been in one like legit relationship, and it was very good. Overall, it was a very positive experience, and even the bad stuff I learned from. And I think the biggest thing would be addressing things early on if it bothers you. That's something that I definitely did not do correctly. And then also just kind of realizing that certain arguments or problems that you can run into, that I ran into, it might appear to be a problem or a challenge, but in reality, it's just a difference of values. In that the way they were raised, the way that they believe the world works and how they work in the world, it just conflicts with mine or with yours. That's just kind of how it went for me, was that I'm like, this isn't really a problem. This is just us viewing things from a different place in our heart. We're not both right or wrong here. That's just how we view the world. And so it's not something you can fix unless you change the other person or yourself. But when it comes down to values, it's not necessarily too late, but it's sort of something that, if your identity is based around it or affected by it, then it's not very malleable.
Mm. The other thing that occurs to me that I learned kind of along the way, and really learned more after I met my wife, by looking back and understanding what the heck had happened in the first place. When I met Louise, it was, I actually told this story on Tuesday in a sort of condensed form, but cutting through the fun part of the story that I told then, when we finally got together, it was after a period of difficulty. We went through some stuff. We both had stuff to go through, but we went through it pretty quickly. And about a month after that, we were at a point where we're starting to feel very, very comfortable with each other. And that comfort
Yeah,
level really helped a lot, because the comfort level came from partly about similar values, not the same values, but similar values. And partly because we had both done a lot of work on ourselves over the years. We often talked about how we met, Louise and I met when we were in our 40s. I mean, pretty late in life compared to many people. And we wondered, well,
yeah,
why didn't we meet 5 years before, 10 years before, 15 years before? Because we got along really, really well. And Louise pointed out to me, you know what? If we had met each other, we probably would have been running and screaming in opposite directions from each other, because we hadn't done the work on ourselves that we needed to do. Because you really do
yeah,
have to be in a place. This is the thing I really learned. You have to be in a place where you love yourself enough that you can love somebody else. If you don't have the love for yourself, you really don't have anything to give to anybody else. And I didn't understand that when I was dating. I only learned that really after I met Louise, that was really true. But what I had been developing during that 20 odd year period where I was dating was learning how to love myself more so that I could give more love to somebody else. And that was probably the biggest determinant right there. Yes, Louise and I have a lot in common. Yes, we have some differences too. But ultimately, we both learned to love ourselves before we met, and then we were able to love each other. And people talk about how relationships, you have to work at them. We found that because we had taken the time to really learn about ourselves, that when it came to having the relationship, it was easy because we'd already done the work on ourselves.
I like that a lot. That definitely resonates with me. That's something because I'd heard the same thing, that relationships are work, and I'm like, well, I feel like they shouldn't be if you can make it work perfectly, or as close to perfect if you
Yeah,
kind
actually
of
don't even have to be
resonated that.
perfect. That's just the thing. It's not about perfection. I would have thought so too, especially when I was your age. I would have definitely thought it was about perfection. It's not about perfection. Because, like we were talking about earlier, life is where you're going along and maybe you're in a good space and all of a sudden you get some bumps and bruises and how you're going to react to it and so forth. Well, when you're doing it in a relationship, you're just running into the bumps and bruises together. And now you're trying to figure out together how to deal with the bumps and bruises. It's really not any different from that perspective. So the relationship part, the relationship is what actually has gotten Louise and I through a lot of really bad bumps and bruises because we were there for each other. And why were we there for each other? Because we'd already worked on ourselves, so we could be there for each other. That's the thing. It's got to be possible for you to be there for somebody else. The only way you can do that is if you can be there for yourself, and vice versa.
So what would you say then were the most effective ways that you were able to be there for yourself and to love yourself? I know that's something that I've had a challenge with, and I think a lot of young people have a challenge with, is
Oh
sort
yeah.
of taking care of themselves, truly, mind, body, spirit kind of thing. So I mean, yeah,
I can tell you in terms of what I learned over time and what I wish that I had done. I can't tell you in terms of what I did because the way I did it wasn't really that effective because I didn't have a successful relationship for 20 years. So obviously I wasn't doing very much right at that particular time. But what I've learned since then is loving yourself starts with being kind to yourself. And by kind to yourself, I mean we talked earlier about how we learn these lessons from society. We're taught by parents and by peers and by teachers and later on by bosses and friends and so forth. We're taught all these different what psychologists call these tapes. We have these tapes that are burned into our brains, so to speak, that are
yeah,
basically they're the patterns of how we interact. What level of responsibility do we take for our lives, and what are we doing with our lives, and all these tapes about what you're supposed to do, right? How you're supposed to live your life. Those are all the tapes that
yeah,
are in there. And learning to love yourself is about when I say being kind to yourself, I mean giving yourself some slack about those tapes and say, you know what, I know the tapes aren't right. I'm going to try to learn how to erase the ones that are not serving me well and rewrite those tapes into something that does serve me well. But while I'm learning to do that, I'm going to be really kind to myself whenever I notice that I slip up. I'm going to be really kind to myself when I notice that, I keep repeating the same behavior over and over again that doesn't serve me. I'm not going to say, geez, I did it again. Not that I don't do that.
yeah,
I do that sometimes, but I'm learning more and more to say, you know what? Okay, I made a mistake. Big deal. I'm not going to beat myself up about it. I'm going to be kind to myself
yeah,
about it. That's one of the keys to loving yourself. Another key to your loving self, I've learned only in the last year, I've learned this mirror exercises. And I actually heard about these a number of years ago. And when I heard what you were supposed to do, I literally ran yelling and screaming in the opposite direction. There was no way I was going to do this. But this year I decided
yeah,
to do it. Mirror exercise is literally where you wake up in the morning, you go in front of a mirror, you look yourself in the mirror, you look yourself in the eye, and you say, I love you. And that alone was enough to scare me away. But when I finally started to do and the first session lasted about a second and a half, and I was done for the day. The next day, I got
yeah,
up to like 5 seconds. It was that kind of a deal. But after doing that for a while, I started to kind of lengthen it out and talk about how proud I was of myself. And I'm doing all these really good things. I've got this podcast going. The podcast has been going great. This is a podcast I started just on a lark with my wife on our 13th wedding anniversary, just because we like the law of attraction. Not that we had any expectations with it. And now it's turned into this thing for me. I love doing that. And so I would express to myself, I'm proud of the fact that I've been doing that. It's just giving yourself strokes while looking yourself in the mirror and just reinforcing all the reasons why you think you're a pretty good person. And when you do that, a couple of really cool things happen. The reason I started doing that at all was that I heard that Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series of books, had recommended it. And what he said was he did it for 30 days and all the negative self-chatter in his head went away. I said, well, I'd like to try that. I want to get rid of that. That negative self-chatter has been driving me crazy for years. And so I tried it, and by day 20, it hadn't gone away, but it had shrunk a little bit. And by 25, it had shrunk a lot. And you know what? By day 30, it was actually gone. And I said, well, shoot, that's worth it all by itself. Just that. Hey, I got rid of that negative self-talk. And for the most part, it has stayed away. Now, every once in a while, it comes back, and then I'll do some more mirror exercises, and it goes away. But that alone shows two things. First of all, you actually can change your programming. And second of all, it shows I actually was loving myself more because I was not allowing that negative self-chat into my head anymore. I was demonstrating my love on a practical level just by doing that.
I'm going to have to try it now. That sounds really interesting.
It is. It's tough the first day, Drew. I got to tell you, that first day, you look yourself in the eye and you say, I can't say that.
It sounds weird on paper, but
and by the way, there's a way that you can also kind of pin yourself to it. Like you could say to yourself, well, I don't have a mirror handy today, but we live in the era of the smartphone. In a smartphone, you can take a selfie, so you can actually selfie yourself while you're talking to yourself. Yeah. So the excuses are gone.
I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna try it. I will remember to do that. Mirror exercises. Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that I found is just trying to do as many new cool things as possible. And mirror exercises looks like the next one.
It's a good one. Literally everything that you do for yourself, where you're doing something because you feel like it's going to help you feel better, is a way of showing love for yourself. So really, that's what you're trying to do.
Well, that's then I'm on the right track, and I hope that others are too. So I think that's something that the whole world could benefit from right now.
I think so. I think it's something.
Yeah,
I think it's something that everybody needs, but it's also something that everybody can do. It's not like it's hard. The hard part is just getting yourself to do it more than anything else.
Yeah, and that builds character.
It does. Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's.
Now, the other thing that happens is when you start doing various kinds of practices, I found, like, one of my favorite things to do is just to get out in nature and walk on. We have a Rails to Trails path that goes right near our home. So I get out on that path and I'll walk 4, 5, 6 miles in a day or something like that, and enjoy being out in the nature and seeing other people on the path and so forth. Now, the first number of years that I would do that, I was always very much of an introvert, especially when I was your age. I was really an introvert, and that held me back in a lot of different ways. But as I did more and more of getting out there, and as I was studying more about how human psychology works and positive psychology, how that works, I was learning the importance of doing things like greeting somebody. You see somebody out in the path, right? And so greet them with a hello. And it took me a long time to actually do that at all. But once I started doing that, and I started to really enjoy the walk, deliberately enjoy the walk and enjoy the nature, and then I'd be listening to my favorite music, really positive music on my phone, and just doing all these different things. I'd get to the point where all of a sudden I'd start getting these goofy smiles from people. As I'm walking along the path, I'm thinking, what are they smiling at me for? And then I realized it was because I was smiling and I didn't know it, because I'd been doing all this work on myself and it was coming out.
Awesome.
So that's the ultimate benefit. When you learn to love yourself in all these different ways, it comes out automatically.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I had that my sophomore year at college. I was on the right track for quite a while. It
Hmm.
felt pretty good, and it was one of those things that's it's like contagious, you know,
Yeah.
inspiring others and getting us to smile and to push forward with positivity. Yeah,
It's a little spooky
yeah. I think
the first time you get the reaction, because you don't normally necessarily say to yourself, okay, I'm going to check my face to see if I'm smiling. You just walk down the road because that's what you always do. And then you get this reaction and you say, what the hell are they looking at? What's going on? I don't understand. It
yeah,
takes you a while to make the connection.
yeah. I've it took when I was in high school, I didn't used to smile until like I think freshman or sophomore year of high school. Because in the in the movies growing up and all that, all the tough guys
Oh, yeah.
very stern, you know. And my mom's all, Drew, if you wanna meet girls, you're gonna have to smile. And at first it was such a weird thing for me because I had never really smiled. I've always kind of been like just sort of like you're saying introverted, you know, where it when you are an introvert and then to do something like that just to smile at other people, it's like terrifying early on, you know,
Hmm.
because it feels like all their eyes are on you.
Right.
And so that was something that was like the first step was smiling, and then it was talking to people and going out more. And then the one that really, yeah, I'd say if for anyone listening, work with other people, and that'll definitely get you to smile and talk more if it's
Hmm.
like a one-on-one basis and you're helping them.
Yeah.
That's what I learned as a resident advisor in the dorm,
Uh-huh.
and it's a humbling experience too. You'll feel like your life's not going well, and then you'll meet someone, and it's like, oh my gosh, they need way more help than I do. Like I can make a positive contribution there because like I'm ahead of that, and I can help them. And then it kind of brings you back to ground level where you're like, my problems I'm focusing on right now, not too bad.
Hmm.
I've got this. So
Hmm.
it's a win. It's a win-win-win.
That's
Everyone
true.
wins.
That's true. Yeah. Well, it's always
Yeah.
easier to help somebody else than it is to help ourselves. I think that's why so many of us put off helping ourselves for so long because it's easier to help someone
Yes.
else.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of funny, really. It seems like helping yourself should be easy, because you're the only thing you really do own.
I like the story that you told about how you did learn to smile, though, and I went through very much the same kind of thing. In fact, when somebody asked me online, in one of the law of attraction groups, whatever, what's the best way to love yourself better? Smile at somebody. The more that you smile at somebody,
Yeah.
you are basically showing who you really are inside, and they get to see who you really are. A smile shows who you really are. Smile it shows the beauty of the person within. Male, female, it doesn't matter who you are. Smiling makes you more attractive. It makes you
Yeah.
more interesting. It just, especially if it's genuine. If you're faking it, that's not quite the same thing. But if you're genuinely smiling at somebody,
Yeah.
that gets through every single time, and it has impact that you can't even predict in advance. You only know about it after the fact, but it's potent and it's very positive.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I think that's a good dating tip too. Is just to smile at random people, and then if they smile back, go say hi,
Hmm.
even if you just talk to them for like 20 seconds. Yeah, that's how I've been meeting people lately. I was just forcing myself to go talk to strangers, to disobey all the lessons I learned as a kid, and talk to strangers.
Yeah, it's definitely the kind of tape to write over. You don't
So
want that tape running around in your head. Don't talk to strangers ever. No, never do. No, no, no.
yeah,
You don't meet anybody that way. You got to be careful. You got to be smart
yeah,
about it, but you don't want to just turn it off entirely.
yeah, exactly. You have to be leery of strangers, but to approach with caution. And then once you realize that they're not there to murder you, you're free to talk to them.
And
Although in
that
my case, with spooky shirts on, they think I might be there to murder them. And it's like, no, no, metal people are really nice. I promise.
that's true. Actually, I do remember that because metal kind of came up after I had left college, but I was still fairly young, and it was intimidating to see somebody with a metal shirt. And I guess it still is today. But you began to think like, oh my God, is this person going to attack me or something like that? No, but that's what the image says.
Yeah, Yeah, well, it's something that, like, if you're not into it, the aesthetic is all you really see, and it appears kind of scary, kind of into. I mean, when I was in Davis, all you have to do is wear a metal shirt, and you are the scariest person in Davis.
Mm.
That's
Hmm.
all. That's all it takes. So if I'd go skate at night, all I'd have to do is throw on a metal shirt.
You were
No
safe.
one,
No one would
yeah,
mess with you.
no one messes with you. Yeah, yeah. But anywhere else pretty much doesn't apply.
Yeah.
But in Davis, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I actually also had the extra advantage because of my height, because I've always been much taller than most people. And so it made it easier for me to be out, even though I was feeling very intimidated about stuff, just because
Yeah.
actually, for me, it created a reverse problem. Because when you're so much taller than everybody else, you intimidate people just by standing. And
Yeah.
that can actually be something that I found that hard to get around at times because it got to the point where I was wondering, like, how could I even get a conversation going when somebody's turning and running the opposite direction just because I walked up?
Yeah, that does sound challenging. That is I don't have that. How tall are you?
6'8".
6'8"?
Yeah,
Oh my god. Okay,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm 5'6", so I have the opposite problem.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I never really felt short though, so that's a good thing. So I've got some friends that feel short, and you can tell it bothers them.
Mm.
But I don't know.
And that
Yeah,
attitude definitely holds you back, whichever way it is, whether you feel like you're too tall or too short, it holds you back. And it's
yeah,
something you have to kind of find a way to get past. There's no doubt.
yeah. Yeah, that's for me. I'm very close in height to Napoleon and French ancestry. So now
You
all I
do.
got to do is take over Europe,
There you
and
go.
I'll never have a small man complex. That's all it takes.
Just watch out
Taking
for
over
Waterloo.
Europe.
That's all I advise you. Watch out for
Yeah,
Waterloo.
that's right.
Hey, before we part company for today, you're still pursuing your writing and your comedy career. Do you have anything coming up? Any gigs happening?
I've been taking a short break just to sort out all the
Oh,
health
you have.
stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but because in June I did the 45-minute CD show. And so I've kind of been mostly focusing on writing and then catching up on film writing because I've had a screenplay I've been thinking of for 2 years. And so I finally started writing that the other day.
Good for you.
And thank you. Yeah, it's that was a tough one because I'm kind of a perfectionist, so I don't like to make like crappy things. But then if you try and make it perfect, it's never gonna happen. So it's like a
Right.
mix of like being slightly critical as you're writing, but you can't. You'll hit a wall if you do that. So that's been the focus lately. But hopefully some. I'm my friend's gonna do a CD show in December, hopefully, and he also does dark humor, one-liner, comic kind of stuff. So he and I thought about trying to book shows along the West Coast,
Uh-huh.
and that would be awesome.
Yeah.
'Cause that's comedy is for I think a lot of comedians like to just be up on the stage and be the center of attention. But for me, I really like having what I've made connect and resonate with people and have them be happy and inspired because of it. So that's why I want to go on tour at some point. So
That makes sense. In fact, we should have a conversation sometime because you choose to do dark humor, but you want people to be leaving happy. That almost seems like a dichotomy. So that's a topic we should delve into more deeply so that you can explain, where you're coming
that
from and why that
yeah,
works.
that sounds like next week's topic. I
Okay.
think so. If
Yeah.
you want,
Okay.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
interesting. It is. Dark humor is very underappreciated. It's one of those things that you have to have been in a dark place to appreciate it, and then you'll kind of like it reaches to an audience that for the most part people find things that I do funny if it's a niche audience too. I'm never going to
Hmm.
be like mainstream kind of stuff.
Right.
uh,
Right.
but the people who like love that kind of stuff, who need it, I'd say it helps them when they're in a dark place, because that's the same kind of stuff that inspired me to become a comedian. Is that
Hmm.
so? It
Okay.
was there for me when I needed it. So
Well,
yeah,
let's
that's
talk.
that's
Let's talk about that next week then. That sounds like a good
yeah.
one. All right.
I,
Well,
I love that.
well, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you next week.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. And we'll see you all next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.